Crazy, rich Asians. Woo, right? Yeah. Hands up if you've seen the film. Okay. What are y'all waiting for? It's available on iTunes and all that. If you haven't seen the film, the story is essentially about the differences in the values and expectations between Western and Asian culture. And the film is actually based on a book. Now, a chapter that really stands out to me in the book is when the protagonist's best friend goes to get the tea, or the hottest gossip, on her boyfriend's secretly baller family. Now, while the metaphorical tea is being poured, the book goes into really deep detail about the many steps it takes to pour the literal tea, if you're doing it the traditional way, that is. But I'm going to boil it down into 3 simple steps for you. Step 1, prepare. Choose your flavor, boil your water, get your cups. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Step 2, awaken. What does that even mean? So I didn't know this until I read the book, but this is the process of taking your hot water, pouring it over the leaves, rinsing that, pouring it out, before you actually pour in the water that you're actually going to drink to make the tea. Now, this is done to awaken the leaves to reveal their full aroma. And step 3, finally, you enjoy, rinse, and repeat. Tea, as you know, is traditionally served hot. But what do you do when your tea goes cold? Do you drink it as is? Do you add hot water? Or do you pour it out and brew something new? Similarly, when you're at a crossroads in life, do you continue just doing the same thing, waiting, hoping, and wishing that a path will eventually become clear? Or do you take matters into your own hands and pivot? I'm going to share with you a time in my life when I decided to pour out my tea and steep something new. But before I can tell you my story, I have a bit of a confession. I'm a millennial. You know, the generation that ruins everything. Yeah, that's right. That's us. From humble bragging about making a home-cooked meal because #adulting, to using weird words like saying FOMO, YOLO, and describing things as, it's lit. I didn't come up with that one, and I've never used it until this, just this moment, I swear to you. We even found a way to glorify working ridiculously long hours to the point of burnout. Hands up if you've been there. Now, the burnout thing is really interesting to me because, well, why? Why do we push ourselves so hard? Well, it's not going to be news to you, but I'm going to call it out anyway. There is a complex set of expectations that we put on ourselves and on others to have something, to achieve something by a certain stage in life, like by the time between 30, for example. Some of these expectations may include, going to school, getting a good job, working your way up in that job, to pay for your expensive gym membership, maybe buy a place, start a family, eat a lot of avocado toast, all to flex for your 400 followers on Instagram. These expectations are based on values. Now, values are your guiding principles. They are what help you make decisions, prioritize. They help you shape your understanding of what's right and what's wrong. Now, for the longest time, I thought that my values were security and perfection, or at least as close as I could get to it, because if you do things perfectly, no one can say you don't belong. Now, I was born here, but my grandparents weren't. And growing up, every weekend we'd go to dim sum with them. Now, if you've ever been to dim sum, you know that it's your job to order the tea. And every single time for us, it was always the same thing, hung pin or jasmine tea. Now, is jasmine tea my favorite tea? Not particularly, but you always order the tea that you know your parents will like, your grandparents will like. And everyone drinks from the same teapot. It's a collective experience. Now, this is different than in, let's say, Western culture, where you get to be an individual. In my generation, millennials have popularized going to coffee shops and taking a good 30 seconds to order our hyper-customized drinks. Mine, for example, is a tall green tea latte with soy, no foam, and half sweet, please. But the expectation in Asian culture is that you do what's best for the family. the collective. Whether that be making choices about tea at dim sum or in life, like choosing a safe career path. Pop quiz. Who can shout out a safe career path? I heard a doctor, a lawyer, one more. Whoa, okay, that was a lot. Okay, an engineer. I have to admit, I can't see you all out there, but are y'all Asian or something? Because congratulations. Congratulations. You just named some of the only acceptable career paths for Asians. Yeah. I call them career expectations. Tea, as we already established, is usually served hot. And to me, that represents playing it safe, because safe means you can't fail, right? Because failure would bring heartache and shame and worry to your family that's worked so hard for generations to build a life for you here in Canada. And that immigrant family guilt is real, y'all. It's true. Mm-hmm. There's immense shame in failure in Asian culture, whereas in Western society, it's for the most part accepted, expected, and sometimes even celebrated. So how do you mitigate the risk of failure? Well, naturally, you do what you're supposed to do, right? You try to do things perfectly. But I learned the hard way that even if you do things perfectly, that can actually lead you to failure. Here's the story. In 2016, my life seemed pretty good. I was working in marketing in a leadership role at a cool tech company, and to be honest, I was living that avocado toast life. And well, a few months into the job, my direct report left, and that left me holding the bag. A bag filled with stuff that I wasn't really good at and didn't particularly enjoy. And more often, my boss would actually give me negative feedback on the quality of my work. This had never happened to me before. And so I kind of freaked out. And so I thought that, okay, maybe if I just work more, I could get back up to that track of perfection. I would work 10-hour days, 5 days a week, and even though I was physically there, I wasn't mentally there. On a 3-day trip to Chicago, I was running on fumes, literally. I probably had 8 hours of sleep in total over 3 days. And when I finally got a chance to sit down, I got a message from this girl I went to high school with. And it was a picture of a letter that I'd written to myself in grade 12. It read, "I want so much out of life, and I know how to get it. The hard work doesn't scare me, not succeeding does." See, at that time in my life, I had these big dreams of becoming a TV personality one day and having my own talk show. But I chose marketing as my path because, well, you can probably guess, because it was safe. Now, reading this letter to myself after working nearly a decade in marketing made me realize that I still wanted the same thing, yet I hadn't done anything about it. And more than that, I realized that these values of security and perfection, they weren't actually my values. They were a reflection of my fear, my deeply rooted fear of failure. And I didn't actually know what my real values were. It was an awakening. I had let the tea steep for too long without having rinsed the leaves. I had to pour out my tea and steep something new. Now, upon this realization, I decided to go on a mission to figure out what my real values were. And in my research, I came across 3 ways how you can identify what your values are. And I'm going to share them with you. Firstly, you can take a look at your peak experiences in life. Now, these are the times where you felt the most fulfilled, the most accomplished, the most proud. For me, a pattern that arose was, it was always when connecting. You can also take a look at your code of conduct. What are the things that you absolutely have to do in your life, or else a part of you will die? For some people, it might be, fitness, meditation, or spending time with family. For me, it was always about being creativity. think about the times you felt the most upset. And then turn that around and think about why. What values were being suppressed? These are your suppressed values. For me, in that job, I felt like I wasn't really being myself, and I was trying to be someone that I wasn't. So I realized that my third value was authenticity. Once I discovered my values, I sought to create these things in my life. I did fun video projects, and I scored a sweet internship producing and hosting for a TV station. And eventually, I got paid for it too. I was legit, and I was hashtag living my best life. Well, after work, that is, because I was still working that marketing job, where I wasn't progressing, wasn't improving, definitely was not doing things perfectly. 2 weeks before my 29th birthday, I got fired. I lost my job. I lost my job because I wasn't performing. I wasn't performing because I was depressed. I was depressed because I wasn't living in line with my values. To my surprise, my immediate reaction was gratitude. Gratitude for no longer having to live a lie, and gratitude for the opportunity to start fresh. Now, I very well could have gone to find another marketing job, but I knew that that wouldn't make me happy, and I was determined to make sure that the next thing I did would be in line with my values that were now so clear to me. So I took some time to explore that teenage dream of mine, and during my time of fun employment, as I called it, I continued to work for that TV station, and I found myself covering the Vancouver Asian Film Festival. And for the first time, I saw myself on screen. Like, not literally on screen, but I saw faces of people who looked like me, whose experiences were similar to mine. And somehow, without words at all, I knew exactly what these characters were thinking and feeling and why they did what they did. I was deeply connected to their stories, and I thought that, okay, well, maybe my story was worth telling so that people could feel connected to themselves as well. So I did a bit of a pilot, and I wrote a blog post. I wrote a blog post about how I lost my job, discovered my values, and tried to build a life more in line with my values and not just the expectations I allowed myself to be influenced by. And through that experience, I learned that failure was not shameful if it leads you to learning and growing. And I got an outpour of support for sharing my story. People telling me that they too had gone through the same thing, or that in reading my story that they learned something about themselves and about others. So then I took it a step further, and knowing that I wasn't the only one that had a story to tell, I invited my friends to tell their stories as well. And the same thing happened, words of support and encouragement. Together, our stories would create Cold Tea Collective, a media company and community for, by, and about Asian millennials, sharing our experiences of how we navigate our identity growing up in Western society, a cultural mosaic. And more than that, we were giving something back to our fellow Asian millennials, giving them something to connect with, to feel seen, heard, and understood. Over the last 2 years, we've shared over 100 stories of people just like me, and maybe even just like you, of how we're living between cultures, in between our collective and our individual hopes, dreams, and fears, including the cast of Crazy Rich Asians and more. Growing up between cultures constantly begs you to choose between a set of values, expectations, and behavior. And then the simple question of which tea to drink at dim sum reveals the deeper struggle of identity. But the beauty of being Canadian is that you don't have to choose a side. You can choose to live in the in-between. And that the only expectations you should live by are to live in line with your values. I'm going to leave you with one final thing, and no, it's not how to live the perfect life, because clearly I'm still working on that. But what I will leave you with is just a very simple guide as to how you can live life more in line with your values. And it's the same as pouring tea. Prepare. By arming yourself with skills, knowledge, and experience. Awaken yourself to infinite possibilities and what's really important to you. And lastly, enjoy, rinse, and repeat. Thank you.